Hey everybody, Papa Wiggs here with Wiggs. We're recapping the Packers Eagles game in Brazil. Listen, another great week one. Wiggs kind of called it here on the scoring. It was a little bit higher scoring than I thought it would be. So which you know from a fan perspective is great, right? So I think there's a couple things that we found out today. One, the Packers defense has a lot of work to do. They struggled against the run. Barkley, ended up with over 100 yards, and he had two rushing touchdowns, one receiving touchdown. He had an effective game overall. I'm not taking anything away from Barkley. But listen, I'm still, this is the first game of the year. I'm still not, sold that you're going to see this type of production every week. Barkley has a history of popping off games and then throwing goose eggs. It doesn't surprise me though. I think we kind of talked, about it, that both these defenses were going to struggle, and they obviously did. AJ Brown had a really nice week, 5 receptions, 119 yards, and a touchdown. One of those was a 68-yard TD catch. So he looked, he played really well, looked well. Devontae Smith, obviously, again, he had 7 receptions for, six, was it? 84 yards. He had another effective game. I think we talked in our last video that, or not our last video, but our one video when we were talking about the start sits, I think it was, that both these guys could potentially go off for 100 yards, and they almost did.
Yeah.
So I think it was really a good a start for the Eagles. One thing that makes me a little nervous is Jalen Hurts has got to get his fumbling and his interceptions under control. He had a couple fumbles and 2 interceptions tonight. They keep hyping him up and stuff, and I believe he is a really great quarterback, but he's gotta start eliminating the mistakes and the turnovers, because they almost cost them the game. So I think that was one thing that I noticed here. Obviously, I think their defense has some work to do, but I think we talked about this, Wiggs, when we were talking about this game, when we were talking about our picks, right? That whichever defense played the better game was going to end up winning. And I think today that was the Eagles, of course. So, and then on the other side of the ball, you had the Packers. Listen, Jaden Reed came, he played, balled out, touchdown, 138 yards on 4 receptions. Romeo Doubs ended up playing, and like we talked about in our sleeper matchup when we were talking about Wicks, a lot of that kind of depended on whether Doubs was going to play or not. And he did. Doubs showed up, 4 receptions, 50 yards. So he had a real effective game. Jacobs, respectable. 84 yards. He had a couple receptions. So he had over 100 yards combined. So it was a respectable performance. But if you're depending on him as a number 1 back, you would hope for more than 12 points, right?
Well, yeah, or at least a touchdown to add to that.
So I think the one thing that everybody should keep an eye on. Well, obviously, Reed also had a carry for 33 yards and a touchdown. So it looks like they're going to be using Reed maybe kind of like the Chiefs are using Worthy. So
or like a Debo Samuel.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The one interesting thing about this is that Watson really was a non-factor outside of the touchdown that he had. 3 receptions, 13 yards, and a touchdown. So, you know, something to keep an eye on. You know, in further games. And the other big story, if anybody was watching, is 5 seconds left. Jordan Love went down. He had a lower body injury. I've watched the replays on it. From what I can see, it looks like it might have been an ankle injury because it was pretty nasty. Yeah. So LaFleur didn't really have any updates after the game. Something for you Jordan Love owners to keep an eye on. Me included, for our one dynasty league, to see where that shakes out. Hopefully, it'll just be a sprain, and given that they played on Friday and stuff, he's gonna have a little bit extra time to recover. I don't know, I think it just all depends on what they find out here in the next couple days. The one big concerning thing for me is Jordan Love threw only completed 50% of his attempts. That's just not going to cut it. I mean, this guy signed a big contract. He needs to, he needs to come out and he needs to figure it out. He needs to hit his targets. He needs to get that. Now, in all fairness, I don't have the stats on how many of those were drops, but I don't think there was that many of those. I just think that he's got to do better than 50% of his a 50% completion rate. It's not gonna fare well in future games if you can't improve that. And to me, he was going up against a kind of a vulnerable Eagles defense that was struggling with a few injuries, and their defensive backfield is kind of suspect right now. So I think that Love's really got to work on that and make sure he improves on his completion percentage, and hopefully he won't have a major injury with his ankle. So with that, another great game. I look forward to seeing both of these teams. I think their offenses are going to be explosive this year. I really do. So it'll be interesting to see, and just keep an eye on the Love situation. They had Malik Willis come in for the last 5 seconds, which isn't really going to give you much. One pass. So, but the good, well, there's never a good thing about an injury, but the one plus side for the Packers is at least they traded for what I would consider a serviceable backup in Malik Willis. I mean, I don't know what you think, Wiggs, but I didn't think he was that bad in Tennessee. I think he just came into an unfortunate situation when they drafted Levis and stuff. So I think that if Love's going to miss some time, the Packers should still be able to have an effective offense with Willis in there, because Willis is kind of the same type of quarterback as Love was in relationship to being able to move off his feet and stuff. So we'll see how that plays out. But Wiggs, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Truthfully, I was kind of disappointed by both the quarterback plays. Jordan Love obviously only completed 50% of his passes. You look on the other end of things, though, too, and Jalen Hurts didn't do much better. He only completed 3 more passes on the same amount of attempts, only 18 more yards, threw 1 more interception. It was honestly disappointing for both quarterbacks, in my eyes at least. I think running backs on both these teams kind of carried the weight and disappointment of the quarterbacks, in my honest opinion. Obviously Barkley had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Actually, he had a receiving one, so he had 3 touchdowns in that game. But I'm not sold on Barkley. I had a feeling he was going to come out and pop off this game, but it's a week 1 game in Brazil. A lot of intangibles there. So I guess I'm not surprised it happened, but I don't see him doing that all year at all. I
It's
mean,
interesting that Hurts had 13 carries. I mean,
and only 33 yards.
I mean, only 33 yards, but he
Yeah.
still had 13 carries. So, that's a little tale of what you can
Yeah.
expect in future games from Hurts. I think is that you'll definitely see him
Have
you
more
know
yards.
have popping off for some.
And I don't see Barkley carrying for 24 yards every or 24 carries every single game. So like I'm expecting him to more so be around like a 17 to 19 range rather than 24. Um, I don't know. It wasn't impressive from quarterback play. Yes, Barkley had a good game. I'll give him credit there. And I'm not a huge Barkley fan. I think he's a little overhyped. And then on the other side, Josh Jacobs, 84 yards. I guess it's a little respectable right now. A touchdown would have been nice there. What I'm shocked by is Emmanuel Wilson having 46 um, yards on 4 carries. That's actually kind of nuts. Jaden Reed obviously having a worthy like play, carrying at one time, going for a lot of yards, scoring a touchdown. Like you're not going to see that consistently, but I wouldn't doubt it if we maybe saw Wilson playing a little bit more. I know they still have Lloyd on the team. I don't know. That's kind of impressive to me to see 4 carries
Lloyd's out though.
on 46 yards. Receiving wise, I was actually surprised that Dontavian Wicks um, didn't have any receptions. I believe he was only targeted 3 times in the game as well. I don't think that's necessarily his fault. I think it's more so on Love at that point. It was a very disappointing game from Love, so I wouldn't shy away from Wicks still just yet. I still have faith that he'll end up being that 2 or 3 guy on this offense. I think Jaden Reed is the clear cut one, although Dobbs did have the same amount of receptions, but it could have been different. You never know with completions from Love, so we'll kind of see how that goes. And like we were talking about, Tucker Kraft over Luke Musgrave. We both had feelings that something like that would happen, and I really think Tucker Kraft, after seeing how he played last year, is going to be at least the starting tight end on this team, like midway through the year. I think he's a better fit than Luke Musgrave. And yeah, and just like we said, talking about the Eagles as well, both these guys had almost 100 yards in this game between Brown and Smith receiving, which I think we're going to see quite a bit this year. It's kind of like a Tyreek Waddle type combination. These guys are going to be getting the most looks. Goddard will be in the mix a little bit, and maybe one of the running backs in Barkley are getting well. But I think those guys are in a much better situation. The one shock that I'm surprised about is no receptions behind Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, well, it's the same with Wicks. So
Yeah, I'm a little surprised because I think this group of receivers is actually pretty good, and I think Dotson will be a pretty solid wide receiver 3. I also think Wicks will be a solid wide receiver 2 or 3. It was kind of a surprising game, but it did go high scoring like I thought. I thought maybe the Packers would pull off a game, but I don't know. It's week one. Week one's always fluky. We start to see how teams better perform here in the weeks to come. So
yeah, no, they'll both be fun to watch. So yeah, it'll be an interesting year. So with that, Wiggs, you got anything else to add? All right. Well, hey everybody, check us out on Fantasy Fools PPR on YouTube. We're also out on um, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, X. Like, share, subscribe. Check us out. Wiggs will be dropping some more content. If you get a chance, check us out Sunday morning when we go live and talk about the matchups when we stream live and stuff. So hopefully you guys are finding this beneficial. If you have any feedback, we're always open to it. Got any questions, just let us know if you need help with your lineups, anything like that. So with that, though, have a good night, and we'll see you next time.